Okay. Okay, so first of all, with regards to the eye, I'm just going to start with some key terminologies that you need to understand in which they can ask you in the exams. Okay, so basically, rods. Now, the rods are basically found, they are receptor cells. So, R for rods, R for receptor cells, and they are found inside the retina of the eye, which are sensitive to dim light and help to distinguish between black and white. Okay, so that's rods. Cones, on the other hand, is more are also receptor cells and are also found in the retina, but they are sensitive to bright light. Okay, and they help to distinguish between different colors. So it's very important for you to understand the difference between rods and cones. Now, I'll send you this study guide after the lesson, so you don't have to write down everything now. Now it's more just listen, understand. If you have any questions, please ask as well. Okay. The pupil is at the central opening within the iris, which allows light to enter, which we're gonna come to. And then something called the pupillary mechanism. So there's a difference between a pupillary mechanism as well as accommodation. Okay. Now, pupillary mechanism is the regulation of the pupil size to control the amount of light entering the eye. Okay. Accommodation, on the other hand, is the ability of the lens, okay, of the eye to alter its shape for clear vision when viewing both near and distant objects. Okay. A field of vision refers to the area that one eye can see, then also the difference between convex and concave. Okay. Convex is a shape which curves outwards, thicker in the middle than the edges. So, for example, let me just draw a quick illustration of the convex, just for you to remember the difference between convex and concave. So convex is, so if you're looking at from this side, convex is like that, okay? And then concave is more something like that, okay? It's more inwards, it's concaved in. That's concave. So shape which curves inwards, thinner in the middle than the edges. So this is concave, and that is convex. Okay, so let's read further. So receptor cells, let me just turn this to that quickly. Okay. The receptor cells that detect light are called rods and cones. These are situated in the retina at the back of the human eye. The eyes are found as a pair position at the front of the skull, and the field of vision from each eye overlaps, which allows a slightly different image of the same object from each eye. So the type of imaging that occur as a result of this, that you get something called a binocular vision as well as a stereoscopic vision. Now, binocular vision, the word bi means two. Okay? So it's vision using two eyes with overlapping fields of view so that the separate images are combined and interpreted as one image by the brain. Okay. Stereoscopic vision is the ability to form three-dimensional images, okay, which provides the ability to judge distance, depth, and the size of the object. Okay, if you look at the structure of the eye, so this is your eyelid, and you got your eyelashes. Then the white is called the sclera. This is the iris, and then here you get your pupil. So light basically enters via the pupil through the into the light enters the eye through the pupil. But we're going to discuss the functions now. Um, okay. The eyeballs are inside a bony cavity, and the connective tissue and fat surround the eyeball. Okay, so around the eyeball, you have connective tissue and fat, and essentially what it does is that it protects it from mechanical injury. It kind of cushions the eye. The front of the eye is protected by the eyelids. Okay, and you also need to know what is the function of the eyelids as well. So they have eyelashes. Why? Why is the eyelashes? It stops foreign particles from entering the eye. Okay. The colored part of the eye is known as the iris, and the opening in the center is the pupil, which we spoke about. Okay. And we also spoke about this white outer covering layer, which is essentially the sclera. So the white over here is the sclera. Okay. So the internal eye can divide into three layers. Okay, you have the sclera. So if you look at the cross section of the eye, so you first can see there you have your sclera on the outside. Then you have something called the choroid. Okay, so below the sclera you have the choroid, and then below the choroid, towards the inner part, you have the retina. Okay. Um, Over here, so in the very front part, so if you look at the sclera comes here. This part over here in front is called the cornea. Okay. While I'm doing the structures, I'm soon going to do the functions as well. So let's speak about the sclera. Okay. The sclera is a tough white inelastic layer that covers the eye towards the posterior. Okay. The adaptation, because a question can also ask you what is the structural adaptation of the sclera? So the protection of the eye because it is inelastic. So the fact that the sclera is inelastic, it kind of it nicely protects the eye. Okay. So that is how the sclera is structurally adapted to perform its function. So remember, is it Mishkana? Am I pronouncing your name right? Mishay. Is it Mishay? Unmute quickly. I wanna I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. Oh, Misha, sorry. Okay. Can you mute yourself, please? Right, Misha. So, Misha, what's very important is that you need to understand when you study for life science, you need to understand what is the structure, what is the function of that particular structure as well. So, the sclera, what it does is that it protects the inner structures of the eye, also maintains the shape of the eye as well. Okay, moving on to the cornea. So, the cornea is here in front. As you can see, structurally, it is transparent. See-through continuation of the sclera in front of the eye, which is convex. So it's, as you can see, it's convex. And the adaptation is that the transparency. So because it's transparent, right, it allows light to pass through, and the convex shape. The fact that it's so convex, it causes refraction or bending of the incoming light. Okay, so the function is that it allows light to pass through and it causes refraction or bending of the incoming light to create an image on the retina. Okay, now moving on to the choroid. Now, the choroid is just below the sclera. It's a dark colored layer which contains many blood vessels and pigments. So if they ask you in an exam, the structure in the eye which contains blood vessels, then you must know it's the choroid. Yeah? The choroid contains the blood vessels, and the function is that the pigments absorb light. The pigments in the choroid absorbs light to prevent the reflection of light. And then the blood vessels, the purpose of the blood vessels is that it supplies nutrients and oxygen to the to the cells of the retina. Okay, moving on to the other structure. So we can see here that below the cornea, you have something called the aqueous humor. Okay, so what's the structure and function of the aqueous humor? Okay, So the aqueous humor is a watery fluid found in the space between the cornea and the lens. And the function is that it maintains the shape of the cornea and it plays a small role in the reflection of the incoming light. Okay, so that's the aqueous humor. So we're going to start from outside to inside approach. This over here, so the opening, okay, this over here is called the iris. Okay, so you have the iris, and then the space between the iris is called the pupil. Okay, so what's the structure of the iris? The iris is the colored portion of the eye. Sorry, with an opening at its center called the pupil. The iris essentially contains two types of muscles to control the size of the pupil. Okay, it has circular muscles as well as radial muscles, which we will speak about soon, which plays a role in the accommodation of light. The function is that it controls the amount of light entering the eye through the pupillary mechanism. Sorry, it's not accommodation, it's called pupillary mechanism. The pupil, on the other hand, what's the function, structure and function of the pupil? Now, where's the pupil? Connection is unstable. Okay, it's fine. What you need to understand about the pupil, the main function of the pupil, right, is that it allows light to enter the eye. Okay? Going on, you have the lens. Now, what is the structure of the lens? The lens is an elastic and biconvex structure behind the pupil of the iris. It's held in place by suspensory ligaments, and it is transparent as well, meaning it is see-through. So as you can see here, that is your lens, okay? And over here you have your suspensory ligaments. And the suspensory ligaments come from the cilia. Hi, Misha. Sorry, man. Um, I don't know what happened. Hi, Misha. Sorry, man. I don't know. My connection is quite unstable. Can you hear me now? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. Okay. So where did I stop? I stopped by the ciliary body, ne? So remember you have your lens. Attached to the lens is your suspensory ligament, and then you have over here the ciliary body. Right. So what's the function of the lens? So we spoke about the function of the lens already. Um, Let me just see if we done. Yeah, so exactly. So I said it is held by the suspense ligament. It is transparent. The function of the lens is that it changes shape to allow the eye to focus on near and distant objects. That is called accommodation. Okay, the lens accommodates for the vision of near and distant objects, right? In terms of, it also allows light to pass through as well. In terms of the suspensory ligaments, now the suspensory ligaments are the ligaments that are attached to the ciliary body. Okay, and the function of these ligaments is that it holds the lens in position during accommodation, and the tension on the suspensory ligaments changes to alter the shape of the lens. Okay. The ciliary body contains ciliary muscles, right? And it is a thickened part of the anterior of the choroid, and these ciliary muscles essentially contract, um, or they relax to alter the tension of. Oh, I think it went off again. Um, where's that textbook now? Can you hear me, Misha? Okay. So where did I stop now? So I stopped by the ciliary body, ne? It contract or relax to alter the tension on the suspensory ligaments during, so I said accommodation. Okay. Then after the lens, you have the fluid inside is called the vitreous humor. The vitreous humor, the structure is that it's a jelly-like substance found behind the lens, and the function is that it maintains the shape of the eyeball and plays a small role in the refraction of the incoming light. Okay, and then you have your retina. Now, the retina is over here. The function of the retina, it is the inner layer of the eye which contains the rods and the cones that are sensitive to light. The rods respond to low light intensity or dim light and provide night vision as well as peripheral vision. And the cones essentially responds to bright light and provide sharp, clear color vision. And the neurons essentially carry impulses from the rods and cones through the optic nerve to the cerebrum, which is the brain. Okay. Now, on the retina, you'll see that you have something called a blind spot and a yellow spot. Now, this over here is your optic nerve. So, as the light enters and kind of touches the retina, that kind of stimulus is converted to an impulse. That impulse is kind of. Sorry, Misha, this connection is so unstable. Um, okay, Misha, are you there? Misha, are you there? Can I continue? Can you just give a thumbs up? Okay. So my connection is quite bad. So yeah. So what was I saying now? There's the yellow spot and the blind spot. So the blind spot is over here by the optic nerve. The yellow spot is over there. So the purpose of the yellow spot is that there's a small indentation at the back of the eyeball containing the most cones, and that's the area essential of clearest vision. The blind spot, on the other hand, is a small area on the retina below the yellow spot which contains no rods or cones and hence no vision. It's the area where the blood vessels. Sorry, I'm just gonna sit upstairs because it's a little bad, the connection downstairs. I'm gonna unmute now. Okay, Misha, can you hear me now? Okay. Okay. So what I said is that this blind spot essentially is a small area on the retina below the yellow spot. It doesn't have any rods or cones. Essentially, it doesn't have any vision. And remember, it's the area where the blood vessels enter. So it's where the blood vessels essentially enters the eye, and it's also where the optic nerve leaves the eye. So the functions of the area of no vision, it's the inner parts of the eye that are supplied with oxygen nutrients, and the impulses are essentially transmitted. So you know it's from the eye, so from the optic nerve towards the cerebrum for interpretation of that particular image. Okay. Um, Let's see, I think we're done. Yeah, so we did all of the structures, all of the functions. I'm now just going to explain accommodation and pupillary mechanism. Now, accommodation is essentially the ability of the eye to alter the shape of the lens. And essentially, this is to ensure that a clear image always falls on the retina, whether the object is either near or distant. Okay, so for near vision, remember that it is less than 6 meters from the object, right? If you are less than 6 meters from the object, that's near vision. If you are more than 6 meters from the object, it's called distant vision. Now, you need to know what happens. So, number one for near vision. So, if it's near vision, the ciliary muscles contract, the suspensory ligaments slacken or loosen, the tension on the lens decreases, the lens become more convex. Okay. This causes the light rays to bend more, and a clear image is focused on the retina. Okay. For distant vision, it's the opposite. So the ciliary muscles relax, the suspensory ligaments tighten or become taut, the tension on the lens increases, the lens become less convex or flatter. This causes the light rays to bend less and a clear image is focused on the retina. So what you can do for the examination, you can study the things for near vision and then just remember the opposite for distant vision. Okay, now moving on to pupillary mechanism. So pupillary mechanism essentially is the process by which the diameter of the pupil is altered. So the diameter of the actual pupil is altered to control the amount of light entering the eye. Okay, and the intensity of light is the stimulus that changes the size of the pupil. So whether it is a bright light or a dim light, that will essentially change the size of the pupil. Now, the iris controls the amount of light entering the pupil. Okay. It has circular and radial muscles which act antagonistically to change the size of the pupil. Okay. So, what happens in bright conditions? So, in bright conditions, you will see that the radial muscles of the iris. So, if you look at the iris, you can see that the radial muscles of the iris relaxes. The circular muscles over here, so that these are radial muscles. The circular muscles of the iris, they contract. The pupil gets smaller. So you can see the pupil becomes smaller, they constrict, and the amount of light entering the eye is reduced. That's in bright light conditions. In dark light conditions, the radial muscles, right, contract. So on the image, you'll see that the radial muscles now contract. So instead of relax, it causes the iris to contract, and the circular muscles of the iris relaxes. So you can see there that the circular muscles of the iris relaxes. The pupil widens or gets bigger. So you can see on the image that the pupil gets bigger or widened, and then you just end off by saying that the amount of light entering the eye is increased. So as you can see that the fact that in dim light conditions, the pupil gets bigger because you want more light to enter the eye so that you can have a better kind of a clearer image that can basically be formed on the retina. Okay. Now we're going to learn about visual defects. So there's kind of four types of defects. I think three or four defects that you need to know for the examination. The first type of defect is called short-sightedness. Okay, so you get short-sightedness and you get long-sightedness as well. Now, short-sightedness occurs when a person has the ability to see nearby objects. So you can see nearby, but you cannot see distant objects clearly. Okay, so try to remember short-sightedness. You can see short, but you can't see far. Okay, so the nature of the defect is that when looking at distant objects and in how they put the question in the exam to you as well is that when looking at distant objects, there's blurry vision. Why? Because the light focuses in front of the retina. And this is essentially what you need to understand in this image over here as well. So as you can see that what needs to happen is that the light rays entering the eye needs to kind of hit on the retina for the image to occur. What's happening here is that the light rays is kind of the image forms in front of the retina, just before the retina. So the defect causes that the eyeball is too long. So what you need to understand is that the eyeball, instead of being like this, the eyeball is too long. Number one. Number two, the cornea being too curved for the length of the eyeball. Okay, so the cornea is too curved because it's too curved, that light is forms before the retina, as well as the inability of the lens to become less convex. Okay, so because of these three things causes short-sightedness. It's the mechanism of the causing of the short-sightedness. Okay, and always remember, the image falls in front of the retina. That is short-sightedness. The patient can see near, but the person of the patient cannot see far. The treatment of short-sightedness is wear glasses with concave lenses. Okay, so what is let me just see quickly. There we go. So as you can see over here, so concave lenses, you can see that it's concave. So it caves in, right? It caves in. So what happens is that the light rays are reflected outwards to fall on the retina. So if you wear the concave lenses, you can see that as the light enters the lens, it kind of bounces outwards, and then that ray basically goes through the lens. It can go nicely there onto the retina for the clear image to form. So always remember, for short-sightedness, you need concave lenses. Okay. Righto, very important. Second one is long-sightedness. Long-sightedness is basically the opposite, meaning that the patient can see far, but cannot see near. Right. So this is so the patient has the ability to see distant objects, but is unable to see nearby objects clearly. Okay. What's the nature of the defect? So when looking at nearby objects, the light focus behind the retina, causing a blurred vision. So instead of in short-sightedness, we see that the light rays kind of form before the retina. In long-sightedness, the light rays, the image forms behind the retina. Okay, and the defects may be caused by. So there's three mechanisms which causes long-sightedness. Number one, the eyeball is too short. Okay, the eyeball is too short, the image is going to form. So if you have a short eyeball, image is going to fall behind the retina. Number two, the cornea is not being curved enough for the length of the eyeball. And number three, the inability of the lens to become more convex. Okay, all of these three things can cause that the image forms behind the retina. What is the treatment for long-sightedness? It is the opposite of short-sightedness. So we say that in short-sightedness, it's concave lenses. In long-sightedness, you have to the person the patient has to wear glasses with convex lenses. And as you can see over here, you can see that it's convex. So remember, this is concave. Convex is like that. Concave is right. Sorry, I mean convex, right? So convex kind of comes like that. As you can see, light rays are reflected inwards and fall on the retina. So when you wear the convex lenses for a patient with short-sighted, long-sightedness, the light rays kind of are refracted inwards and it forms nicely there onto the retina. Okay. Moving on to the third condition, which is astigmatism. Now, astigmatism essentially occurs when the cornea or the lens is not equally rounded in all directions as it normally would be. So normally what happens is that you have your cornea and you have your lens, right? And you have the light entering, and this is the area where the light rays usually fall, which is at the retina at that particular point. A patient with the astigmatism, can you see here that the shape of the cornea, can you see it's quite more sharper, it's kind of more con convexed, and you can also see that the shape of the lens can also kind of be affected as well. As a result, you can see that um, the areas where the light rays fall, it's different to where it has to fall. Okay, so that's astigmatism. And what does this lead to? It leads to number one, blurry vision, headaches, and squinting of the eyes. The treatment is, you may have to say, so when they ask you, okay, how would you treat this particular patient with the astigmatism, you're gonna have to say, glasses with prescription lenses, contact lenses, as well as laser therapy. Okay, the last condition is that of cataracts. Now, cataracts occur when the clear, transparent lens becomes cloudy. So, our lens are clear, right, to allow the light to enter the eye. When it becomes cloudy, cataracts. So C for cloudy, C for cataracts. Easy to remember. Okay. So this prevents light from entering the eye and results in blurry vision. The cataract develops slowly and increases in size over time. Okay. So you can see here that you have nice light entering. For a cloudy lens, the light rays are all over the place. There's blurry vision. The treatment is that in the beginning, prescribed glasses, spectacles may be used. As the cataract develops, surgery might be required. And during surgery, the lens is removed. Okay, they take the lens out and they put a new lens back in. Okay, so that's the end of the theory. That was a lot of theory now, actually. I'm gonna send you this textbook. Um, and then what you can do for me now, okay? Do you have this textbook now? You have the textbook. It's the life science. It's like a very good study guide. It's fine. I'll send it to you, and then for now you can do for me these questions: activity 5, activity 6, and activity 7, and then you can just send me your answers, and then I'll mark it. Okay? Okay. Perfect. Any questions from your side? No questions.